The darkness of space stretched endlessly beyond the borders of the Valtor system, an ocean of silence undisturbed for millennia. That silence was about to be shattered. The Archi Dominion's warfleet moved with eerie precision. 5,000 warships gliding through the void like an unstoppable tide. Each vessel, from the monstrous dreadnoughts to the sleek, lethal interceptors, carried the scars of conquest. Plasma burns scorched their hulls, remnants of civilizations that had dared to resist and been utterly crushed. Their advance was not reckless but methodical, a slow march toward annihilation. For centuries, the Dominion had spread across the stars, consuming everything in its path. They did not negotiate. They did not leave survivors. They were a force of nature, and to stand against them was to invite extinction. Ahead of them lay Valtor 7, a world that should not have mattered. It was no core world, no strategic fortress. There were no planetary shields to hold back the coming storm, no hidden superweapon waiting to turn the tide. It was a world of the lost. The refugees who had fled the Dominion's advance had come here seeking shelter in the last unclaimed corner of space. They had nowhere else to go. The Galactic Council had turned its back on them, unwilling to risk war with the Archi, and so, Valtor 7 had become their final stand. They had gathered what little they could: outdated warships, repurposed freighters, salvaged weapon platforms, to form a desperate line of defense. It was not enough. The Coalition fleet numbered fewer than 300 vessels, most of them too old to even match the Dominion's smallest warships. Their captains knew this. Their soldiers knew this. And yet they stayed. Not because they thought they could win, but because they had no choice. In the war room beneath Valtor 7's capital city, the weight of impending doom pressed against every soul present. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered with hundreds of red markers. The enemy fleet. They moved with terrifying speed, an unrelenting wall of death. Commander Orlan Teresh, the last surviving high-ranking officer of the Valtoran military, clenched his jaw as he observed the incoming enemy formation. His reptilian features were tight with frustration, his scaled fingers curling into fists. He had spent a lifetime fighting wars that couldn't be won. This one would be no different. "They'll reach firing range in less than 2 hours," one of the officers reported. Voice hollow. Orlan already knew. The Dominion would arrive, and within minutes, their defenses would crumble. The planetary bombardment would begin soon after. And by the end of the day, Valtor 7 would be nothing more than scorched rock. Ambassador Kellis of the Tyran stood beside him, his elongated face pale. He had been one of the few who had dared to hope, to believe that the Galactic Council might step in, that someone, anyone, might come to their aid. "They should have answered," Kellis whispered. "They should have done something." "They won't," Orlan said, his voice hard. "They never do." The distress signal had been sent, not out of hope, but out of duty. A final cry into the void, not for salvation, but to ensure that someone somewhere would remember. No one had expected an answer. And yet, the speakers crackled to life. A voice, deep and unwavering, cut through the silence like a blade. "This is the HSF Indomitable. We have received your distress call." For a moment, the war room remained frozen. Disbelief flickered across Orlan's face. His sharp eyes darted toward the communications officer, as if expecting some kind of explanation. A mistake, a malfunction, a phantom signal. But no, the transmission was real. A second later, the voice returned. "Hold the line." The words settled over the room like an electric charge, confusion thick in the air. Orlan's head snapped toward the nearest tactical officer. "Who was that?" The officer's hands flew over the console, eyes wide as data flooded the screen. "A ship, sir. A single vessel approaching from deep space." "Show me." The holographic map shifted, zooming in on the sector. There, on the very edge of the system, a lone blue marker appeared, moving at impossible speeds. A single human warship. Orlan's breath caught in his throat. No fleet, no reinforcements, just one ship. What in the void are they thinking? "They're flying straight toward the Dominion fleet," the officer reported, voice shaking. Ambassador Kellis took an unsteady step forward. "A diplomatic envoy?" Maybe someone coming to negotiate? Orlan scoffed. The Dominion doesn't negotiate, and neither do humans. The war room descended into stunned silence. Everyone knew of humanity, one of the younger races, an upstart species that had remained largely isolated from galactic affairs. Their fleets were small, their empire modest. But there were whispers, stories, battles where human warships had held against impossible odds, where their strategies had defied reason, where they had fought when no one else would. But one ship against 5,000. This was madness. And yet, even as Orlan stared at the display, unable to comprehend what he was seeing, the human vessel did not slow. It did not attempt to contact the Dominion. It did not alter course. It was coming, and the Dominion did not. Yet realized that something had changed. The vastness of space held its breath. Valtor 7's defenders, battle-weary and resigned to their fate, had spent the last days preparing for the inevitable. There had been no illusions of victory, no last-minute miracles. Only the cold certainty that they would die, and their world would burn, until now. A single warship, no larger than a Dominion battlecruiser, streaked through the black void like a silent predator. The HSF Indomitable. Orlan Teresh's sharp eyes remained fixed on the tactical display, his reptilian features tense with disbelief. The human vessel moved with a speed that defied expectation, as if it did not understand fear, but fear was the only logical response. He turned sharply to the communications officer. "Hail them." A brief pause. The officer hesitated. "Sir?" "You heard me," Orlan snapped. "They need to turn back. Now." A transmission was sent. Static filled the room. Then, "This is the Indomitable. No retreat." Orlan's fists clenched. He took a slow breath, steadying his temper. "Human vessel. This is Commander Orlan Teresh of the Valteron Defense Force. You don't understand the situation. The Dominion fleet is 5,000 strong. There is no tactical advantage in engaging them alone." A pause. Then a simple, chilling response. "We are not alone." Orlan's brow furrowed. He turned to the sensor officer, who frantically searched the displays. "No other ships detected, sir. Just them." "Then what in the void do they mean?" The Indomitable did not answer. It only continued forward. The Dominion fleet, still unaware of its approach, moved in flawless formation. Their flagship, a Leviathan-class dreadnought named the Tyrant's Grasp, loomed over the rest, its massive hull adorned with the scars of conquered worlds. Admiral Zoval of the Arkai Dominion observed the unfolding battle preparations from the command bridge, his mandibles twitching in anticipation. The coalition fleet, a scattered, pitiful resistance, would be nothing more than target practice. A subordinate approached, his insectoid limbs clicking against the polished floor. "Admiral, we have detected an unidentified vessel entering the system at high velocity." Zoval did not even look up. "Another refugee transport, perhaps? Let it come. They will witness what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The officer hesitated. "Sir, it's not a refugee transport. It's human." Now, Zoval turned. His black multi-lensed eyes narrowed. "Humans?" The word carried weight. His officers stiffened. Even the Dominion, undefeated for centuries, had heard whispers of human warships. Tales of ships that fought beyond their limits, of captains who never surrendered. Zoval let out a guttural hiss. "How many?" "One, sir." Silence. Then, a sharp, mocking chitter. "One?" Zoval repeated, his mandibles parting in amusement. "They send one?" His officers relaxed. The tension evaporated. "It is a mistake, then," Zoval declared. "Perhaps a desperate envoy hoping to negotiate for their miserable lives." "Orders, sir?" Zoval waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Destroy it." Across the Dominion fleet, orders were relayed. A detachment of 100 warships broke formation, moving to intercept. These were not mindless drones. They were seasoned hunters. They had slaughtered entire planetary defenses in minutes. A single ship was beneath their notice, but the Indomitable did not flinch. As the Dominion vessels accelerated, weapons primed, the human warship's engines burned with an intensity that made the void itself seem to tremble. It was fast. Faster than anything Orlan had ever seen. The ship didn't move like a fleeing diplomat or a desperate defender. It moved like something with purpose, something hunting. Orlan turned to his officers. "Bring up their specs. I want to know what we're dealing with." More frantic keystrokes. Then, confusion. "Sir, there are no records of the ship in the Council's database." Orlan's scales tightened. "What do you mean?" The officer's hands hovered over the controls, uncertainty flashing in his expression. "There is no class designation, no known specifications. It's as if this ship doesn't exist. Impossible. Every major warship of every major species had been catalogued. The humans did not have the resources to field unknown vessels. Then what was this? The Dominion fleet, oblivious to such questions, moved to eliminate the anomaly. The lead HFY warship, a battleship named Glorious Dominance, opened fire. Bolts of superheated plasma streaked through the void, burning like miniature suns. The Dominion did not miss. Their weapons were the pinnacle of galactic warfare, honed through centuries of conquest. Any other ship would have been vaporized instantly. The Indomitable did not even take the hit. In an instant, it was gone, moving, faster than sensors could track. One moment it had been there. The next, nothing but empty space, a blur, a shadow in the black. Then, explosions. The Glorious Dominance shuddered as something struck it, not from the front, but from behind. The massive warship convulsed as its hull tore open, internal fires bursting from its wounds. Orlan's eyes widened. Did that human ship just phase through their fleet? No one answered, because no one understood what they were seeing. The Indomitable was already in motion again, carving through the formation with impossible grace. It did not fire endless barrages of plasma like the Dominion. It did not rely on brute force. It was surgical. Each strike was precise. A weapons array here, a shield generator there. Every shot found a weakness. Every impact left devastation in its wake. Xoval, still aboard the tyrant's grasp, rose from his command throne, his posture rigid with rage. "Impossible," he snarled. "One ship cannot." The Indomitable vanished again. Sensors scrambled to track it. Dominion warships turned in frantic, chaotic movements, desperately searching the void. Then, another explosion. Then another. Every few seconds, another ship fell. The Dominion was not used to fear, but for the first time in centuries, it began to creep into their ranks. Orlan watched the display, pulse pounding in his head. He had spent years fighting wars he could never win, facing enemies he could never defeat. But now, for the first time, he felt something else. Hope. The Dominion was learning a lesson today. The Indomitable was not a single ship. It was a storm, and it had only just begun. Admiral Xoval's mandibles twitched in fury as the Indomitable vanished once more into the abyss of space, leaving behind only the burning wreckage of Dominion warships. The scattered debris of the Glorious Dominance drifted like lifeless corpses, silent reminders that something was horribly wrong. The Dominion did not lose battles. Not like this. "Where is it?" Xoval snapped, his multifaceted eyes darting across the chaotic battlefield. "Find that ship!" His officers scrambled over their consoles, antennae flicking with nervous energy. The Dominion had fought hundreds of species, crushed countless fleets, conquered entire sectors, yet nothing in their vast history had prepared them for this. A single warship should not have been capable of such destruction, and yet it was. The HFY fleet, which had once moved in perfect, unbreakable formations, was now scattered and frenzied. Warships veered wildly, attempting to locate their unseen enemy. The Indomitable had no such confusion. It moved like a phantom. Without warning, the sleek human warship reappeared behind a Dominion destroyer. Before the HFY could react, a concentrated burst of high-velocity railgun fire shredded through its exposed propulsion systems. The ship listed forward, engines flickering, before a secondary explosion ripped through its hull. Then, it was gone again. Orlan Teresh stood frozen on the bridge of his battered defense ship, his reptilian gaze fixed on the unfolding battle. His own fleet had been moments from annihilation, powerless against the might of the Dominion. Now, one human ship was rewriting the laws of war. How How is this possible? His second-in-command muttered, disbelief thick in his voice. The Indomitable did not fight like any warship Orlan had ever seen. It did not rely on overwhelming firepower like the Dominion, nor did it attempt to match them in brute force. Instead, it moved with a precision that was almost unnatural, striking where it hurt the most. Its weapons were not wasted on shields or reinforced armor plating. Every shot found a weak spot, every strike crippled, but it was not just the ship. It was the way it fought. Unlike the Arkai, who followed rigid doctrine and pre-planned tactics, the human vessel adapted in real time. It predicted the Dominion's movements, striking before they could react. Every attack was calculated, every maneuver executed with perfect intent. It was as if the Indomitable was not a warship at all, but a living thing, a predator, and it had just begun hunting. The Dominion Strikes Back Admiral Zoval bared his fangs. He would not be humiliated by a single vessel. Regroup, he barked. Stop chasing ghosts and focus fire. I want overlapping kill zones across all vectors. The Dominion fleet moved swiftly. To comply, ships repositioning to cover one another's blind spots. Thousands of cannons, missiles, and plasma lances realigned, filling space with interlocking waves of destruction. The Indomitable could not stay hidden forever. And the moment it appeared again, fire! A wall of energy erupted across the void, a barrage so dense that no ship could possibly evade it. But the Indomitable did not evade. It pushed forward. Sensors screamed warnings as a Dominion battlecruiser, the Iron Fang, loomed ahead, its main cannon charging a shot powerful enough to crack a planetary defense shield. The Indomitable did not slow. Instead, it fired a single projectile. Small, almost insignificant in the face of such overwhelming firepower. The Dominion crew barely had time to register what had happened before the Iron Fang's weapon core detonated. A catastrophic chain reaction tore through the vessel, splitting it apart in an instant. A shockwave rippled outward, catching nearby ships in its deadly embrace. The human vessel had not wasted its attack on armor or shields. It had struck with surgical precision, hitting the exact point where the battlecruiser's volatile energy buildup was at its most unstable. And now, the Iron Fang was nothing more than scattered debris. Admiral Zoval's mandibles clicked violently. In rage, enough of this. He turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the Tyrant's Grasp, full assault mode. Bring all main batteries online. If a single ship wanted to challenge the Dominion's might, then he would answer in kind. The Tyrant's Grasp was no ordinary warship. It was the Dominion's crowning jewel, a dreadnought forged in the burning remains of 100 conquered worlds. Its weapons could tear moons from the sky. Its armor could withstand sustained bombardments for weeks. It was not a warship. It was a superweapon. The Dominion had crushed empires with it. One human ship would be no different. The Indomitable had won its battles in the shadows, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before counterattacks could land. But now, Zoval would drag it into the open, and he would obliterate it. A deadly showdown. The Tyrant's Grasp powered up, the glow of its supercharged weapon cores casting an eerie light over the battlefield. Its main gun, an apocalyptic weapon capable of firing a compressed energy beam the size of a city, locked onto the Indomitable's last known position. Zoval sneered. Let's see how fast you are now. The moment the human warship reappeared, the dreadnought fired. A blinding lance of energy tore through space, a force so powerful that it warped local gravitational fields. The Indomitable barely had a fraction of a second to react. The human ship executed an emergency vector shift, but the Dominion's shot was too fast, too wide. The Indomitable was caught in the fringes of the blast. Its shields failed. For the first time, the Indomitable stumbled. The once unshakable human warship tumbled from the impact, its elegant movements momentarily disrupted. Zoval's sneer widened. Again, he ordered. The Tyrant's Grasp began charging a second shot. The Dominion fleet, emboldened by their leader's success, surged forward. The Indomitable had seemed untouchable, until now. But something was wrong. Despite the damage, despite the impact, the human ship did not retreat. Instead, it steadied itself. And then, it turned to face them. Orlan Teresh felt a chill race down his spine. He had seen the Indomitable fight as a hunter, striking from the shadows, always one step ahead. But now it was different. The human ship had been wounded, and a wounded predator was the most dangerous kind of all. The battle was not over. It was about to begin in earnest. The void trembled with the echoes of war. The tyrant's grasp loomed like an unshakable mountain of metal and destruction, its weapon cores humming with enough energy to tear through planetary crusts. Surrounding it, the Dominion fleet moved with renewed aggression, their formations tightening, their targeting systems recalibrating. For the first time, the Indomitable had been struck. It had danced through the Dominion's fire, weaving through storms of plasma and kinetic bombardments with an elegance no warship should possess. But now, it had stumbled. Its hull was scorched, its shields flickering. The Dominion had finally landed a blow. And yet, it did not retreat. It did not flee into the depths of space. It turned. Orlan Teresh could hardly believe what he was seeing. His reptilian hands clenched into fists as he stared at the human vessel through the view screen of his crippled command ship. Logic dictated that the Indomitable should be falling back, reassessing, re-engaging in its phantom-like tactics. But this was not a retreat. This was a change in strategy. The Hunter had become something else entirely, a vengeful force. The Indomitable surged forward, its engines burning hotter than before, a spear of light hurtling toward the heart of the Dominion's might. It was no longer slipping through shadows, no longer striking from unseen angles. It was charging the tyrant's grasp head-on. Admiral Zoval's mandibles clicked in anticipation. "It's lost its mind," he muttered. Foolish. The tyrant's grasp recalibrated its primary weapon, the titanic main cannon spinning up once more, feeding on raw energy as its targeting array locked onto the advancing human warship. Fire! A white-hot lance of destruction carved through the void, a weapon designed to end wars with a single shot. But the Indomitable did something that defied every law of space combat. It accelerated. A normal warship would have attempted to evade. A logical captain would have steered away from the impending doom streaking toward them. But the Indomitable did the opposite. It closed the distance in a fraction of a second, shifting trajectories at the last possible moment, sliding just beyond the core of the blast. The shockwave from the cannon rippled across its hull, leaving deep scars, but the ship did not falter. No, it was already retaliating. From the Indomitable's forward hull, something shimmered. It was not a typical energy weapon, nor was it a torpedo barrage. The Dominion fleet had expected retaliation in the form of conventional warfare. What they had not expected was precision. A cascade of metallic slivers erupted from the Indomitable's underbelly, hypersonic flechettes, each one guided by an onboard AI that calculated microsecond adjustments in real time. They struck not at the Dominion's armor, not at its shields, but at the joints, the seams, the delicate networks of conduits that kept its weapons operational. The tyrant's grasp's secondary batteries failed before they could even fire. Admiral Zoval snarled. "Compensate! Recalibrate targeting systems!" His officers scrambled, but the Indomitable was already moving again. The human warship twisted in an impossible maneuver, cutting through the Dominion fleet like a razor through silk. Its railguns fired in rapid succession, not in a wild spray, but in deliberate, calculated bursts. Each shot tore through exposed fuel lines, reactor exhaust ports, vulnerable sensor arrays. Every hit was surgical. Every hit was devastating. Orlan Teresh watched in stunned silence. The human ship did not fight like the Dominion, did not rely on brute force. It did not waste energy overpowering shields or battering armor in a war of attrition. It fought with knowledge, with understanding. It fought like it had already won. The last trap closes. Xoval's rage turned to something colder. Fear. He had commanded fleets for decades. He had shattered civilizations, burned colonies, subjugated entire species. Never, not once, had he encountered an enemy that learned like this. That adapted so quickly. The tyrant's grasp still had power, still had its main cannon. The dreadnought was built to withstand sieges that lasted months, even years. One ship, no matter how cunning, could not hope to bring it down. But Zoval knew, deep in his core, that the Indomitable was not fighting to break the tyrant's grasp, was fighting to end the battle entirely. A warning blared from his tactical station. "Admiral," one of his officers rasped, voice trembling. "It's targeting!" A deep vibration shuddered through the dreadnought. The Indomitable had bypassed the Dominion fleet. It had ignored their desperate counterattacks, their overlapping fields of fire. It had one target, and it had found its mark: the Tyrant's Grasp's command bridge. Soval's compound eyes widened in horror as the ship's sensors finally caught up to the madness unfolding before him. The human vessel had mapped the dreadnought's internal schematics. It had traced every power conduit, every stress fracture, every vulnerability. It knew where to strike. The Indomitable fired. A projectile, no larger than a human forearm, streaked forward. It was not a missile, not an energy blast. It was something far worse, a breaching charge. Soval barely had time to react before the round struck the viewport of the Tyrant's Grasp's bridge and detonated. The explosion was small, precise, but it was all that was needed. Atmosphere vented in an instant. The reinforced structure of the bridge cracked, then shattered, sucking the command crew into the abyss of space. Soval's last thought, before the void claimed him, was bitter disbelief. They had not been defeated by strength. They had been defeated by strategy, by understanding, by the one enemy they had never truly prepared for: humans. Aftermath. Orlan Teresh inhaled sharply as the battlefield fell into eerie silence. The Dominion fleet, now leaderless, drifted aimlessly, their weapons systems flickering with uncertainty. Some attempted to regroup. Others simply powered down, their morale shattered. And the Indomitable? It remained still for a moment, as if waiting, as if judging. Then without a word, without a signal, it turned and vanished. Orlan exhaled, his voice a whisper. They were never here for war. The Indomitable had come, not to fight, not to claim victory in some grand campaign. It had come to deliver a message, a warning, one the Dominion would never forget. Orlan Teresh stood in stunned silence, the wreckage of the Dominion fleet stretching before him like the bones of a fallen titan. The battle had not just been lost, it had been dismantled. He had seen war before, he had waged war before, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Indomitable was gone. No retreat, no transmission, no lingering presence. One moment, it had been there, standing defiant against the might of the Dominion's greatest warship, and in the next, it had simply disappeared. Orlan turned, his reptilian eyes scanning the drifting ruins of what had once been an unstoppable force. Fires burned in the void, the oxygen from shattered Dominion vessels fueling brief, flickering infernos before they were snuffed out by the cold vacuum of space. Communications were in chaos. Ships that had once marched forward in perfect, disciplined formation now floated helplessly, their captains leaderless, their purpose shattered. Orlan's second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Varesh, struggled to regain composure. "What do we do?" Varesh's voice was hoarse, almost reluctant to speak in the wake of such devastation. "Admiral Soval is dead. The Tyrant's Grasp is lost. The fleet is—" Orlan exhaled sharply. "The fleet is broken." And it was. There was no other way to describe it. The Dominion's forces were not just outmaneuvered, they had been undone. Systematically, deliberately, surgically. There was no glory in their defeat, no climactic struggle, just annihilation. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain steady. His mind worked frantically, trying to assemble a plan, an explanation, anything that could make sense of what had just transpired. But there was no plan that could account for this. No war doctrine, no Dominion strategy had prepared them for an enemy that did not fight for conquest, for expansion, or even for revenge. The humans had fought like something else entirely. Like judges. Like executioners. And they had chosen mercy. Orlan's hands tightened into fists. Why? Why had they spared the fleet? Why had they held back when they could have ended the Dominion's greatest armada with a few more well-placed strikes? The Dominion did not believe in mercy. It did not understand mercy, and yet, the Indomitable had let them live. But the question clawed at Orlan's mind. Had it spared them, or had it warned them? The silence between wars. The fractured remnants of the Dominion fleet had limped back to Dominion space. A retreat was never declared. but it had become the only logical course of action. Orlan stood in the war chambers of the Dominion's high command, his posture rigid, his scales dulled with exhaustion. The holographic display flickered before him, showing the graveyard of ships they had left behind, the shattered wreckage that had once been the Dominion's finest. Across the room, the high strategists whispered among themselves, their voices laced with disbelief and anger. "This cannot be allowed to stand," one of them hissed. "The humans must pay for this." Pay? Orlan's voice was cold as he turned to face them. With what? Silence. They knew. The Dominion had nothing to match the Indomitable. Nothing to counter. What had happened? They had thrown their greatest fleet, their most advanced warship, their finest commanders into the abyss. And the abyss had swallowed them whole. One of the high strategists, an elder whose name carried weight in the Dominion's halls of power, narrowed his eyes. Then we must understand them. We must learn what makes these humans so dangerous. If they can do this to us, then they can do it to others. And if they can do it to others... He let the words hang in the air. If the humans could do this to the Dominion, then they could do it to any power in the galaxy. The old strategist's mandibles clicked in thought. "Tell me, Orlan, what do you believe we face?" Orlan exhaled, staring at the flickering holographic battlefield. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber like a death knell. "We thought we faced a warship." He looked up. "We were wrong. The shadow of the Indomitable." Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The Dominion had fallen silent. Merchants, information brokers, and spies spoke of the massacre in hushed voices. Fleets had vanished before. Wars had ended in catastrophe before. But this was something else entirely. Something worse. The Indomitable had not just won a battle. It had left a scar in the Dominion's history, a mark that could not be erased. But it had not claimed victory. It had disappeared into the void, leaving no transmissions, no messages, no demands, only fear. And in that silence, rumors grew. Some claimed the Indomitable was the only one of its kind, a single vessel standing between humanity and the galaxy's predators. Others whispered of an entire fleet, a hidden force waiting in the dark, unseen, unknowable. But all agreed on one thing. The Dominion would never move against humanity again, because the Dominion did not understand the humans. They did not know how many more ships like the Indomitable existed. They did not know where it had gone. They did not know if it was still watching, and that was the worst part of all, because they had learned something in the aftermath of their greatest defeat. The Indomitable had never been a ship. It had been a message, a warning written in fire and ruin, and the Dominion had only been allowed to live so that they would spread it. Orlan Teresh had always known war. From the time he had been hatched, his destiny had been carved into the stone halls of the Dominion's war academies. He had been raised on the stories of conquest, of how the Dominion crushed lesser species beneath its iron rule. He had commanded fleets, conquered worlds, and broken empires. But this was something he had never known before. Fear. Not fear of death. Not even fear of defeat. No. This was something deeper. Something primal. The kind of fear that seeps into the marrow of your bones, that twists your thoughts, that leaves you staring into the void, knowing that something is staring back. The Indomitable had vanished. It had torn through the Dominion's finest warfleet like a god of vengeance, reduced their greatest ships to smoldering wrecks, and then disappeared without a trace. Not a word. Not a demand, not a single clue as to where it had gone. The Dominion's leaders called for war. Orlan knew better. War was impossible. War was suicide. But the high strategists, the warlords who had never once seen battle with their own eyes, did not understand. They only saw humiliation. They only saw pride. And so the Dominion sent its spies, its informants, its infiltrators. They scoured the neutral zones, the lawless territories, the distant reaches of space where humanity had begun to expand. They bribed criminals, interrogated prisoners, even tortured those who had once traded with the humans. They wanted to know how many ships like the Indomitable existed. Where had it come from? What was it? But there were no answers. The humans did not speak of it. No records existed. No transmissions, no blueprints, no history of a ship that could do what the Indomitable had done. It was as if the vessel had never existed at all, as if it had been a ghost. The reckoning begins, but the Dominion was not deterred. If they could not find the Indomitable, they would force it to reveal itself, and so they attacked. Not with fleets, not with warships, with assassins, with sabotage, with whispers in the dark. Dominion agents slipped into human space, targeting key figures, disrupting trade, stirring conflict along the borders. They planted explosives in human colonies, arranged accidents in orbital stations, and spread rumors of impending war. They wanted a response. They wanted the Indomitable to return. And then, one day, their wish was granted. Not with fire. Not with war, but with silence. It began on the colony world of Vega's Rest, a thriving hub of trade and expansion, home to millions. It had been an easy target for the Dominion's covert forces. A few precision strikes, a few mysterious disappearances, and the planet had been plunged into chaos. And then, one by one, Dominion spies began to vanish. No alarms, no distress calls, no bodies. One moment they were in the shadows, waiting for orders. The next, they were simply gone. At first, the Dominion thought it was a failure of communication. Then they lost contact with their agents on the nearby worlds of Artemis III, New Horizon, and Halcyon Prime. Not a single one reported back. Not a single one escaped. And then the messages started. Not from the Indomitable. Not from the human government. But from Dominion citizens. They were simple. They were chilling. If you do not stop, we will not stop. The high strategists dismissed it. A bluff, a cowardly attempt to intimidate the Dominion, so they escalated. They sent more spies. They sent more saboteurs. And then, one morning, Orlan received a priority message from Dominion intelligence. A single image, a Dominion warlord, one of the high strategists. His corpse lay in his own war chamber, his throat slit, his body frozen, in a pool of his own blood. His guards had seen nothing. No alarms had been triggered. No ships had entered Dominion space. Nothing had been taken, except his eyes. Pinned to his chest was a simple note. You should have listened. The end of the Dominion's pride panic set in. Orlan had seen fear before. He had seen soldiers break under the weight of battle, had watched weaker species kneel before the might of the Dominion. But this was different. This was terror. Because the Dominion did not know what it was fighting. It had always known its enemies, rebellious colonies, rival empires, savage war bands that sought to challenge its rule. It had always known how to break them. But the humans? The humans were not fighting a war. They were hunting, and the Dominion had just made itself their prey. Orlan knew what had to be done. The high strategists would never listen. They were too arrogant, too blind to see the noose tightening around their necks. So Orlan did the only thing he could. He sent a message, a direct transmission, broadcast across the entire Dominion, across every ship, every station, every world. We surrender. Silence. Then an answer. Not from a war fleet, not from a diplomat, but from a single voice, a human voice. Good choice. And with that, the war was over. Not with a grand battle, not with a treaty, but with a single, whispered truth. The Dominion had not been defeated. It had been allowed to live. Orlan Teresh had always known how wars ended. Victory or annihilation, conquest or surrender. There was no middle ground in the Dominion. A species either stood at the top of the hierarchy or was crushed beneath it. That was the way of things, the law of nature, the truth upon which the Dominion had built its empire. But this was something else entirely. The Dominion had surrendered. Not because their fleets had been shattered in glorious combat. Not because their homeworld had been burned to cinders. Not because they had been given a choice. No. They had surrendered because they had seen something they could not fight. Because the Indomitable had shown them. Because humanity had made them understand what it meant to be truly hunted. The message, Had been sent. Good choice. And then, nothing. No terms, no demands, no immediate invasion. The Dominion's war fleets returned home, silent and beaten. The high strategists, who had once screamed for vengeance, now whispered in hushed voices behind closed doors, too afraid to meet the gaze of their own people. Orlan had never seen his kind like this. Dominion warlords, the rulers of entire sectors, cowered in uncertainty, waiting for the humans to make their next move. But days passed, then weeks, then months, and humanity did nothing. They did not invade. They did not send diplomats. They did not gloat. It was as if the entire war had never happened. Dominion's fleets remained intact. Their homeworlds remained untouched. Their empire, though shaken, remained standing. But that was the punishment. That was the lesson. Because from this day forward, every Dominion officer, every soldier, every citizen knew, deep in their hearts, burned into their very souls, that they were alive not because they had fought well, not because they had been spared, but because the humans had simply lost interest. The shadow that lingered. The fear did not fade. Merchants whispered of human traders appearing in Dominion space, silent, watchful, their ships sleek and unassuming, their expressions unreadable. Governors reported strange disappearances, officials vanishing in the night, entire spy networks erased without a trace. And then one day, the Dominion lost contact with one of its outposts, a small world, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. A refueling station for passing warships, little more than a military checkpoint on the farthest edges of known space. When Dominion scouts arrived, they found the planet intact. No destruction, no battle scars, no sign of an attack. But the people were gone. Every soldier, every officer, every worker vanished. The only thing left behind was a single message, displayed across every screen, carved into every metal wall, whispered through the comm systems in a language no Dominion translator had ever heard before, but somehow understood perfectly. You were warned. The true strength of humanity Orlan Teresh understood now. The Indomitable was not just a ship, it was a statement, a demonstration. The humans had no need for war. No need for mass invasions or grand campaigns. They could end civilizations without ever firing a shot. The Indomitable had done what no other force in the galaxy had ever done before. It had broken the Dominion, not through battle, not through fire, but through fear. Through the knowledge that no matter how powerful the Dominion had been, no matter how vast their fleets, how ruthless their armies, humanity was something else entirely. Something that did not follow the rules. Something that did not play the game of empires and war. Something that could erase you without a trace. The Dominion had spent centuries conquering lesser species, believing itself to be the ultimate power in the galaxy. But now they knew. They were not the apex predators they had always thought themselves to be. They were prey, and humanity was the thing in the dark, the shadow that never spoke, the presence you could feel but never see, the storm that did not rage, did not announce its arrival, only swept in and left nothing behind. And if they ever forgot that lesson, if they ever dared to challenge the humans again, there would be no warnings, no whispers in the night, no second chances, only silence and the Indomitable waiting in the void.